Good evening, everyone. A very warm virtual welcome to each one of you. Myself, Vikram Anand. Very good evening. It's Friday evening on 5 o'clock in Malaysia here, and I have Adzhar with me, Adzhar Ibrahim with me. I appreciate you taking out. This is my first LinkedIn live session on a Friday evening over a weekend, and I appreciate each one of you who's watching us live taking out time on a Friday evening with us. I'm Vikram Anand, taking out time from your busy schedules. Thank you so much. We all working from home. It's been a difficult period for all of us, and in this busy schedule, so take out time and watch myself and Adzhar on our LinkedIn live. I think it is one of Adzhar's first also as a LinkedIn live. So thank you so much, all of us coming together for this Curious Mind series. Without further ado, we have an hour with us and an hour with Adzhar. Let's welcome our guest, Adzhar Ibrahim. I am not going to do the standard corporate blah 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 introduction about Adzhar, because if you go and if you really want to know about Adzhar, you can actually go into his LinkedIn profile and you can read. He has actually written blah 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 about a couple of his corporate stints. So I'm not going to get into those details. You can read about Adzhar when you can visit his LinkedIn profile and read it. But what I would like to start off is Adzhar is a stalwart within the HR space in Malaysia, and he is a charismatic and an unconventional leader for more than 2 decades in this industry in Malaysia, across the region, in global level, and he's worked with some great organizations. So Adzhar doesn't know, just for the audience sake, for all of you, Adzhar doesn't know what is coming his way at this point in time. So the questions would be from me, and you can grab your cup of tea or coffee along, like I've got my cup of coffee, and I'll ask some questions to Adzhar, and we will see how he responds to them, which will be quite impromptu. Are you ready for it, Adzhar?
Yes, I'm ready. Let's have go.
Okay, that's great. Sound is good, audio is good, video is good. Let's grab a cup of coffee and let's move on. So the first one, Adzhar, I've never had the opportunity. You've interviewed me once, you've hired me once. I have never had the opportunity to kind of be on the other side of the fence, Adzhar. And fortunately today, thanks to a virtual lockdown, I am in a virtual world where I can actually sit on the other side of the fence and ask you some very interesting stories. So it is definitely going to be an interesting one. Any opening comments from you, Adzhar, before we get the ball rolling in terms of some of the questions I want to ask you?
I have been retired from corporate life for a bit over 2 years, and I honestly don't quite know how on earth do you guys survive in the current time. I have the greatest of admiration for everybody out there slogging away during the time of the pandemic, during the time of economic crisis, during the time of this new normal. I'm sure it is very, very tough, and in many ways I'm glad I don't have to deal with it. So if you see a little bit of a superior, smart attitude in my face, that accounts for it. But again, keep on doing the good job, because I know it is incredibly hard in today's time.
Okay. We appreciate, Adzhar, your thoughts about us. Let's get the ball rolling in terms of, you've had almost more than 2 decades of an experience in HR. A very basic question I will start with. Did HR choose you or you chose HR?
I actually have almost 4 decades worth of experience working, and all of it was in HR, and HR chose me. I came back from studies, times were tough. I was applying for basically any job available, and the first job that was offered to me was HR. I took it on, and I kept doing it until I retired. So in a way, it was a lucky accident. I could have been offered some other job that I probably would have no passion for, and I may not have enjoyed it as much as I did.
Okay. That's really fantastic. So that's interesting. For me, it's a mixed bag of, I wanted to always be into marketing because I I thought marketing was my passion. Marketing was something I used to. Again, I'm not that old, but I think when I when I started off my after my commerce, I was selling pages at that point in time. We used to sell Motorola pages, so and I used to sell Motorola pages. So I thought I was very good at selling. I used to go shop to shop and sell them. And when I went into college to go for my MBA application, the dean and the director said, "No, but you're fit for HR." And he was like, "You're fit," and I'm like, "No, I'm good for marketing." He said, "No, you're fit for HR," and I was like, "Why?" And he said, "No, you have this. You have the gift of the gab. You have an essence for people, and all the good things." He said. Only later did I realize that he wanted to keep a good gender balance of ratio between boys and girls in the classroom, and that's why he probably put me in HR. So I think somewhere I choose HR and somewhere HR choose me. So I think uh, all of us have some very interesting stories about HR, and I think after we spend that much time, we realize that in hindsight, whatever has happened, it was good, and it was good for all of us.
Let me just make a small point about what you just mentioned, a very interesting background about your history. You wanted to do marketing, you ended up doing HR. What I learned about HR after almost 40 years of doing it is HR is marketing. And when I look around to learn to become a better HR person, I don't really look at other HR people. I don't look at other discipline. I look at marketing because if we look at it, there is a tremendous similarity between what marketing does and what HR does. We are trying to sell a product. Their product may be Motorola pager, maybe a telco product, maybe an airline ticket. Our product in HR is a product called a great job in my organization. So that's our product. We have our product, and we need to sell it to external customers, but not just to any Tom, Dick, and Harry. We need to segment the customers to make sure that these are the kind of people that I like, that I want to buy my product. These are the kind of people that I don't want to buy my product. You also have to sell the product to existing customers, people who are on board, and people who you want to continue buying the product called a great job in this company. At the same time, there are other people in who are your existing customer that you don't want to keep buying the product. So you're bringing in customer, you're exiting customer, you're talking about pricing, you're talking about value proposition, you're talking about servicing the product. Almost everything that you want to learn about HR, you can learn from marketing. And nowadays, with marketing going deeper and deeper into things like analytics and all that kind of stuff, exactly the same skill there can also be brought to bear into HR. So I haven't been a big fan of the HR certificate or diploma or degree or whatever. I always felt that I could learn a lot more from HR, from discipline outside of HR, because HR is actually a pretty young discipline.
True. Very interesting thoughts. I mean, I have been in talent acquisition for more than 10 years also, and I think marketing or selling a good role to some very potential good customers is a very important aspect of HR itself. So I think it plays on.
But don't tell the marketing people I said that, because it's going to go to their head and it's going to grow big and they're going to become unmanageable. Just keep it to ourselves.
On a LinkedIn live, we'll keep it to ourselves. Let's move on to something which we definitely have the topic for today. 4 decades into this, you've been instrumental. You've worked with some great organizations, and I'm not going to name them because it's there. And you've been instrumental in some various HR transformations or transformations of the organizations itself. Were you an unconventional HR professional since the beginning of your career, or this personality of yours of being unconventional in an HR space has evolved over a period of time?
If my career has been unconventional or different, I think it's probably because I myself have always been a little bit unconventional or different. I've always tried to see the other side of things that maybe is not so clearly visible. I always try to see the hidden thing, because to me they are more interesting and they're more fun. And I think that part of my personality carries over into my career and my professional life. But that's not very unique. I think every single one of us carries along our own individual personality into our professional career. So if you're somebody who is excited about changes, then you carry that into your job. If you're a very risk-averse person, then you carry that. If you're a micromanager, if you're a detail-oriented, if you're a big picture guy, you tend to carry that into your job. Unless you make a very strong effort to purposely not let your true self shine into the job, which is very tiring and not very worthwhile endeavor.
Okay, very interesting. So it kind of leads me to the next kind of question. Being unconventional, what according to you, again, across these years, being an unconventional HR, because I think a lot of us strive to be, like you said, it has to come naturally. But when you are unconventional, especially in an HR space, you are bounded by a lot of policies, framework, processes, everything around it. And at the same time, you are expected to be creative, you are expected to be unconventional, you are expected to challenge the status quo, again, so called within the framework. So, how do you actually ensure that that right balance is maintained and you achieve and you strive excellence also? Is it a tough question? No.
I can understand where you're coming from, but I would say that if you are a CHRO, you have no right to be asking that question because you're the boss. If you think there are too many policies, throw them out. If you think there are too many processes, throw them out. How many of them are really useful? I still remember one of the first things that happened in my last job was within about 6 months of me taking over the job, I sat down in a room with my CEO and a few of my team, and we spent an entire afternoon going through our every single piece of HR policy. And most of it, we just throw it out because we say, yeah, this is not useful, this is not necessary, this is again the kind of culture that we're trying to build. Towards the end of the meeting, we were all getting tired, my CEO was getting tired, and I told him, boss, this is policy about X, Y, Z, blah, 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 and I think we should abolish it. And he said, okay, abolish it. And I asked him, don't you even want to know what the policy is all about? And he said, no, I just like the word abolish. So we went out from having tons and tons and tons of policies down to just a bare handful. And I dictated the fact that the policy shouldn't be longer than 2 or 3 pages. It should come in bullet point and they should be targeted towards easy understanding. If people don't understand the policies or the processes, it's not their fault, it's your fault. So I think if you start taking a rather unconventional point of view, you would get somewhere and you will not be able to blame about all of the status quo and all of the stuff because you're a leader and you have the right and you have the power and you have the authority and hopefully you have the courage to say, screw it, I don't want to deal with all of this stuff. The reason why I think I've been a little bit different or unconventional is because number one, it's fun. I get bored quite easily, and if you take your trade from one company to another company, and you still keep doing the same shit over and over and over again, I don't find that very fun. So I want to have some fun. The other thing that I learned, which fitted very well with what I already believe, is the fact that if you're different, you can gain an advantage. I was in a telco, a Malaysian telco, about 15 years ago. That was the last among the 3 big players. We were the smallest, we had the worst branding, we had the least money, we had basically less of everything. And we decided we need to go and we need to start winning. And the only way that we could win is not by trying to be like number 2, it's not like by trying to be like number 1, but by trying to be different. And one of the things that we disagreed was our competitors were all very complex. Their processes are complex, their products are complex, their pricings are complex. So we're going to be simple. And we chose the path, which is a bit more difficult, a bit more dangerous, and a bit more risky, but we chose the path to say that we're going to be different, we're going to be simple. And I remember my boss saying something that if it turned out that our competitors are simple, we probably would have chosen a different way to say that, no, we're not that simple, we are sophisticated, we are fantastic, we are great, blah, blah, but we'll find a way to do it. So what I'm trying to say is, being different quite often gives you some advantage over your competitor because all of them are just trying to be like anybody else, trying to benchmark everybody, trying to be like number one. If you're trying to follow number one, you will always remain behind number one.
Fantastic. Very, very useful inputs. I think those kind of also specify what are the pros of being unconventional, what are the pros of being kind of challenging. What are the cons of it? I'm sure this journey would have not been a straight ride for you. It would have been a bumpy ride, because I can personally, on my own experience, can definitely share that it's a bumpy ride when you're unconventional. It's a bumpy ride when you're challenging. Not everybody wants to follow that path. It's a difficult path to follow. In that circumstances, what have been the pitfalls, or what are the cons of it?
I think the biggest is easily the fact that it is scary, and it is risky, and it is dangerous. Again, going back about 17, 18 years ago in my job, where my boss came to me and said, I want to have a simple HR. I don't want to have job grade. I don't want to have salary ranger. I don't want to have officer. I don't want to have cubicle. I don't want to have this. I don't want to have that. And I was still a relatively conventional HR person at that time. And I was thinking, holy cow, we're going to be in deep trouble. I'm going to be in the industrial court forever, and then I'm going to get sued by everybody. What do you mean no job grade? What do you mean that the tea lady get the same benefit as the chief marketing officer? Because those were totally revolutionary thing for me. So it was scary. But I think I trusted my boss, my leader at the time, and I was thinking, oh, what the hell, you only live once. Let's go for it. And we did do it, and it came out very well. And a lot of the problems that I anticipated didn't appear. And there were some minor problems here or there, but I think we did that very well. And I'm very proud of that particular phase of my career.
Okay, very interesting.
Let me make another point. Another con is the fact that if you are different, then quite often you're going on a road less taken, a road less traveled. And if you're looking around for inspiration or for support or for help, quite often it's not there. So that will be one of the downsides, except that when you choose to go on a different route, you pretty much have decided that I'm not really going to be looking around and asking for advice anyway. So the fact that it's not there is not that big a deal.
What about the fear of being, I know it is scary, you mentioned that, but what about the fear of being labeled, that this person is not one amongst the herd, and it makes life a little difficult to navigate yourself around? You're smiling because you've experienced it, Adzhar. Come on, tell us, how does that work? How does that happen when you are labeled like that? And I mean, I can tell about my experience with you in AirAsia, where you always used to wear that t-shirt and jeans, and it was about that dress code, and we always had some of the most important functions or events in AirAsia. I have never, at least in my life, ever seen you wearing a formal dress. And there used to be those little murmurs in the corridor of about, Adzhar is unconventional, or you do get labeled. So how do you handle that kind of a scenario as a leader, not only as an HR person, but as a leader?
Well, if you portray a certain vision of yourself, like being informal, blah blah blah, and all that kind of stuff, number one, it has to be part of your true personality. The kind of Adzhar that you see in the office is the kind of Adzhar that you will see outside of the office. So you have to be true to yourself. Number two, that personality must also be in sync and in line with what you're trying to create in the organization. The culture that you're trying to create in the organization, that say, we don't get hung up on title, we don't get hung up on position, blah, 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 and all that. It helps to advance that agenda, to say that we are a very informal organization. You can come to me, you can come to the CEO, you can go to the tea lady. No barriers. So it is part of pushing that agenda, as well as part of being your true self. And the other thing that I never really care about what people think about me, and I always think that if they think well about me, I never really know whether they are sincere or not. If they think badly about me, at least I know they are sincere. Whether they're right or wrong, it's another story. And I do want to hear sincere thought. So, plus, a lot of people who chat and yak behind your back, they have their own issues. And they're very insecure, they're very easily intimidated, they look at something that is different and they're not sure. I mean, do I want to do that? It looks cool, looks fun, but I may not have the courage to do it. So then we start pointing fingers at others. Anyway, that's my Friday evening philosophy or psychology. Rather.
No, which is very helpful for a lot of people on a Friday evening, Adzhar, and I'll tell you why. Because you can have that time to digest that information, especially for people who are in Malaysia, because it's a long weekend. So you will have enough time to digest that information and reflect upon themselves as to really at times, and it's a very interesting one. If you have an unconventional leader, it is not necessary many a times that you have to follow that path only, because that might not be the path for you. You just have to identify and follow your own path and work with the leader, isn't it?
One thing that I really enjoyed is running a team made up of many, many different kind of people. I always have some people who are a little bit like me, maybe not totally like me, but I try to make sure that I also have people who are very much unlike me. People who have the strength to complement my weaknesses, because for the strength that I have, I also have my own weaknesses. And I make sure that they are well cared for, they are respected, and they get all the resources necessary to do their job, even if from time to time they need to come and tell me, Adzhar, just get out of the picture, you're messing everything up, let us take care of it. You must always complement your team. You must have somebody on the far left doing lefty kind of thing, and you must have somebody on the far right doing the righty kind of stuff, and you are somewhere managing both ends, because you need the crazy one and you need the stable one also. If you only have crazy one, you're just gonna fall apart. If you're gonna just only have the stable one, you're never gonna move forward. So whatever kind of leader you are, you gotta make sure that you have a very diverse team. So this diverse thing is a real thing. It's not just related to HR stuff. It really does have a strong meaning and a useful function within the organization.
Very true, very true. And I think all the audience who are watching us, these are some very invaluable, insights coming from us, because it plays a very important role. Something I have a very straight terminology of relating this to cricket, or any sport. If you look at in any sports team, whether it's cricket or football, you don't have all your players who are your top A-star performers. There are some top performers, there are some middle performers, and there are some specialists in the team. So you need to kind of have that diversified group to ensure that they work towards a common goal. It's a very common thing, but yeah, I think it works in every sphere of life, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you would hope that every one of your staff and every one of your team are strong performers, but you would also want them to be diverse in terms of personality and strength and perspective and everything else.
Yeah. Good. Let's move on to something equally or more interesting from here. How does give us two examples. So the topic of today evening is challenging status quo, and it is something which comes quite naturally to you. Now, can you probably without taking names of the organizations, can you give us a couple of examples where challenging status quo, when you walked in, you challenged the status quo and it worked out very well, and give us probably an example of it really didn't work out very well and you had some learnings from it?
If you're looking at challenging the status quo purely from the HR function perspective, then basically what you're doing is more of continuous improvement and not really transformation. You're trying to take where you are, which is probably relatively good or could be very bad, and you're just trying to make it better. But if you're talking about transformation, for an HR person who claim that they are transformational, to me is just bull, a lot of rubbish. The real transformation happens when the person at the very top, the leader of the organization, the CEO or whoever, decide that we must change, and here are the reasons why we need to change. And the change is going to be massive, it's going to be all-encompassing, and it's going to be painful, and it is also risky. Because if you're changing and you're doing something that doesn't carry much risk, then you're probably not doing anything very significant. Then it's back to continuous improvement rather than actual transformation. So when I was working under a couple of my previous leaders in the last few jobs, the boss decided that the company has to change because the business environment has changed. And in our case, the change was we are no longer just a phone company selling SIM card and talking about average revenue per unit and all that kind of stuff. We are now becoming more and more of a digital company. So we are not fighting against other telcos, but we are soon going to be fighting against the Amazon and the Google and the Facebook. And the kind of competence, the kind of skill, the kind of culture that you had that made you a successful telco is not necessarily going to make you a successful digital company.
Okay.
Or it can even hurt you and it can even bring you down because the digital company is a totally different company. So there was a desire to say that we have to turn and transform and become a true digital company. And what it means is that our product has to be digital. Our customer have to start seeing different things coming from us and not the same old stuff. Now, if our product needs to be digital, our people need to be digital, because how can they develop, how can they sell, how can they service digital product unless they themselves are digital? So that brings about the need to say that the organization have to be digital. So the external branding that we want to portray, that we are a digital company, that this is our new business model, have to be delivered by a strong internal branding, which is the culture of the organization that say we are digital too. So that was the reason why we needed to be flat, we needed to be agile, we needed to be very savvy technologically, and a lot of the changes that happened there is something like, what if we're starting a company today? What if we are going to be in the digital sphere tomorrow, having started the company today? How would the company look like externally? And of course, how would the company look like internally? And one of the most digital of things is basically the technology. You also have the mindset, but from technology perspective, number one, it is relatively easy. And my solution about 7-8 years ago was put everything on the cloud. So we ended up with 7 or 8, basically every single HR system, from the HR MS itself to the learning system, to the interview system, to all of those stuff were running on the cloud, because cloud is a critical part of going digital. So the transformation that you do internally have to reflect the kind of company that you want to become externally. If you're a customer coming to this company and say, oh, you're selling me digital product, and then you come into the company and you see an old school company with strata and hierarchy and papers and everything all over the place, they're not going to be impressed. So whatever that you do internally is not going to be helping your business case and your future prosperity. And if what you're doing is not directly helping your future and your business, then why are you doing it? So there is a direct correlation between what you need to do versus what the company end up having to deliver. And I think my luck was having a CEO and a leader who truly believe in creating a digital company, serving digital product to a new set of customers, and understanding that in order to get there, we have to change the internal company. So he wasn't saying let's go digital because it was the latest buzzword to say go digital, which is what happened a lot out there. He really does feel that if you don't do that, it's going to happen. And as it was, he wasn't a big fan of HR. He really didn't be part of HR because he thinks that quite often HR is the cause of the problem. And the reason why I got along very well with him is because I'm not a big fan of HR either. I really don't care all that much about HR. And quite often we are the problem. But I do care about talent. I do care about seeing people grow. I do care about mindset. And I think those are probably my only claim to fame, my only claim to being in HR.
Quite interesting. We have a lot of, just to kind of take a pause, if you have a glass of water, drink a glass of water or something, or have your coffee, unless you're searching for water somewhere. There is a lot of audience. Thank you so much. All of you are interacting with us. There is, there's Manish who said hello. There is Linda who has said totally agree with Adzhar on the diverse team. So there are few people whom I know. There are a few people whom Adzhar knows. So we are very happy. All of you are hopefully halfway into this session are enjoying this session and enjoying insights from Adzhar. I definitely have a lot of questions because, and that is why I've named it the Curious Mind series. But in the audience, if you have any um, specific questions which you would want to ask, please write it into the comment section, and I'll be more than happy. I have kind of kept the last 10 minutes for Q&A if there are any specific questions, but if you want any specific questions to ask Adzhar now also right in the middle of it, I'm more than happy to kind of put it forward, and I'm sure Adzhar would be more than happy to answer.
Sure.
As controversial as they can be. Well, till the time the audience asks anything specific, Adzhar, I'll move on to something, one of my favorite questions, and something which I've been always, I'm moving away a little from the topic we discussed, but something which I've always wanted to ask you. And it's on hiring on the spot. Now, there are a lot of people who are in talent acquisition, we call it recruitment, we call it anything. And I have first-hand experience in my entire career. You are the only person who has actually hired me on the spot in AirAsia. I still remember, and I think I'll give a little story to. This was my final round of interview, and to the audience, I'll tell them this was my final round of interview a few years back with AirAsia, and I went to that time it is called LCCT airport. Went to the airport. Adzhar was sitting in an open office environment, and I walk in there, and the only thing Adzhar says, please come, sit down. And I still remember, Adzhar, my first question to you was, are we not getting into a meeting room or something for a final round of interview? And you're like, no, just sit here and we'll have a chat. And there is the entire HR team right around next to, 3 feet apart, 6 feet apart from there. So it was very different. I was really surprised, shocked, not ready for it. But the best part of that was after, I think we spoke probably for an hour and a half, and we went on speaking and discussing things more than an interview. And then suddenly at the end of the discussion, Adzhar, you said, Vikram, I think I like you and we are okay to go ahead and hire you. And that came as a surprise. And my question to you then is, how many times in your career have you done this, Adzhar, of hiring on the spot? And has it really worked for you? How does that happen? I am always intrigued. Any lessons, any mistakes, any success stories? I can say myself as a success story for sure. But anything else you would like to add on to it, along with my story?
I really don't remember hiring people on the spot. You reminded me of your case. And after that, because you mentioned that to me a while ago, after that, a few more people came back and told me, yeah, you hired me on the spot also. So apparently, I have a long history of hiring people on the spot. This is how I see it. After almost 40 years in HR, my success rate in hiring is at the most getting 2 out of 3 right. That's barely 67% success rate, 2 out of 3 right. And for anybody else who come back and tell me that they have a better success factor, then I probably would say, I don't quite believe you. I think people agonize and spend way too much time in making hiring decisions, not because they are doing analysis and all that kind of stuff, but I think they were just afraid to make a decision. Now, you have heard all that you need to hear. You have asked all of the questions that you need to ask. You have seen all of the population that you need to interview. What is there to stop you from saying hire? And I always take the perspective that, especially over my last few jobs, to say that if I need to hire, I will hire. If I don't have a vacancy, I will create one. And if I really don't have a vacancy, I'll go and fire somebody, because there will always be somebody in your team who don't deserve to be there. If you're a big HR person and you have a stock budget of hundreds of millions of ringgit, and you're still agonizing, I cannot hire this person because I don't have budget. Come on, what's the point of being a leader if that kind of stuff stop you from doing what is important? I don't hire people because I have a piece of paper that says we need to fill up this piece of paper, and here are the 5 or 10 team. I hire people because I want to bring some strong personality, strong talent into the team. And most of the time when I hire people, I don't hire people to fill up a vacancy. I hire strong people and I let them come in and pretty much design the work themselves. And that was the fun thing. And if I need to change the organization to accommodate the talent, so be it. What is really important to me is simple. When you need to make a hiring decision, you need to hire fast. And if it doesn't work out, you end it fast. Because you will know after a month or two or whatever it is, this is not working out. And most of the time, it's not working out because the other person is bad. Most of the time, you made a mistake of trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. Or you probably get overly excited about one particular aspect and you forgot to consider all of the other aspects. So quite often it is a mistake on both ends. And I've at times tried to fit them elsewhere within the organization where they could be a better fit. And I've had quite a number of successes there. But quite a number of times also I would have to go and tell them, I'm sorry, this is not working out, so we need to end this quickly. And I'll be very happy to help you with whatever that I can outside, for you to go and get a better job and for you to continue on with your career, because in everybody's career and in everybody's life, there will always be this kind of hiccup. And in a number of cases where I had to do that, and then we still remain friends even after that. So I'm quite happy with the fact that I did the right thing for my organization, and I'm happy for the fact that I did the right thing for the person also.
Okay, very interesting. I was also looking at a couple of questions which are coming through, and one of the questions I'm going to show that question, and it resonates with what I also wanted to ask. Just in continuation to this, Adzhar, is my question. Ravi Ayers asked, Mr. Vikram, you don't need to call me Mr. Ravi. You can just call me Vikram, and I'm in Adzhar school of thought, so just call Vikram. My question is, what qualities are looked for in an instant hiring? And I'll just add on to it, Adzhar, a little bit more. Instant hiring, I've done thousands of interviews in my career, but instant hiring is either a gut feel, or you are 100% sure I'm not going to go wrong on this one, or it is about, oh, this is just the perfect fit for me, fit for the organization at this point in time. What drives that? And probably you can answer Ravi's question also.
Okay, by the time somebody like me, the head of the organization, HR department, sees somebody, the candidate would have gone through various stages of filtering. Somebody would have looked at the CV, somebody would have a couple of rounds of interview, and then I would get to go and meet the person. So even without doing anything, you probably can say that this guy is probably not too far away from being the right fit for the job. Otherwise, you wouldn't be interviewing the person. Then you start looking at other factors. For example, attitude. Attitude matters a lot to me. I love to see people who are eager to learn new things. I love to see people who see the fun side of things in everything, the funny side of things in everything. I like to see people who are excited about the journey ahead, and the fact that the journey ahead is a bit risky is something that makes them even more excited. So there's a lot of personal part, there's a lot of things about attitude in the picture. And later on, I also started looking at how would they fit into the organization. So in my last job, for example, when I needed to interview and hire a direct report, by the time they become the final candidate, even though I couldn't make the decision, I get them to be interviewed by their peers and their future colleague, potential colleague. And in about half of the time, they came back to me and said, Adzhar, this looks like a good person, go ahead, hire him or hire her. And then about half of the time, they came back and said, what did you see in this person? What have you been smoking or drinking? And in those instances, I went with their view, because I respect their view. They're smart people, they may have seen something that I don't. So I'm okay with that. But if I need to make a decision, I'll make it, and I'll make it quickly.
Okay. Very interesting. One thing which any regrets in your hiring on the spot ever, I as an HR professional or as a talent acquisition professional, there have been a couple of times I have made blunders, and I must admit that. I might not admit to the candidate, I might not admit to somebody, but deep within my heart, 101% there have been a couple of blunders. Have you experienced something similar? How does that make you feel, or you learn from it and you move on?
Of course, I just told you earlier on that my success rate in hiring is probably 2 out of 3, not even 70%. By nature, that means that I would have a certain number of people who didn't quite make it. In other words, failures. And if it is a failure, it's probably a failure on their side, but obviously it is a failure on my side also. And you try to learn and you try to be better at the next time. But it doesn't take away from the fact that a quick decision is paramount, it's important, and you shouldn't get so hung up, so risk averse, so cautious that you go on and on and on and on and on, because the best talent out there are the people who have options. And if you take your time, number one, they could be snapped up by somebody else. Number two, they could look at you and say, what bullshit are you talking about, this digital crap? I don't see anything digital at all in the way that you behave, in the way that you function, in the way that you make a decision. So to me, being able to live with your mistake, try to learn as much as you can from it, but understand that this is not a fail-safe process. It is part of the game.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you for that, Adzhar. We have an interesting question in between, and I'll plug that in between purely because I think it's good from a diversity perspective, and she's quite straightforward. But I think I'll summarize the question from Kamalia. Her question is, she definitely likes your unconventional post, Adzhar. Any tips for female leaders who are inspired by your leadership style?
Quite a lot of the female leaders that I saw have way more balls than a lot of the male leaders that I saw. To be fair, this is one thing that I learned, because I always had very, very strong female leaders working with me or for me over time, and many of them have gone on to really, really big jobs, bigger than my job even in many ways, and I think they're very well-known personalities outside there. I remember realizing a long time ago that the women of the world, especially in the corporate life, especially in leadership position, face a lot more pressure than the rest of us. So whatever pressure that us male face, they face those and some more on top of that. They face the office pressure, the glass ceiling and all that kind of shit. But one thing that I saw that was a bit sad in many ways is that because I hired strong women leaders, female leaders, many of them actually earn more or a lot more than their husband. And I noticed from time to time that sort of created issues in our very traditional, very old school society where, the man of the family is supposed to be the man of the family and the woman is supposed to be number one. But what if we have the woman doing much better in her career, earning more money? And that sort of created a lot of friction that I noticed over time. So I'm sure it's not a major discovery on my part alone, other people have seen it. But I think that gave me a lot more sympathy to those people. But, I like diversity. I like to have all kind of people, all gender, all nationalities, all personalities, all whatever it is. So I don't let that stop me. And I also have 3 daughters and 1 son. So obviously I do sympathize with the kind of traditional issue that women have to face.
Fantastic, Adzhar. Just to answer to you, Kamalia, from my perspective, in my whatever little HR career, I have had great working relationships with female bosses or female leaders than probably with the male ones, to be very honest. So I think there is nothing like that. You can be as strong as a female leader, and you can drive some of the best of diverse people across and lead to goals. There's some amazing female leaders around it. You just have to be what you have to be. And like Adzhar said at the start of the discussion itself, just be yourself. And if you're true to yourself, you will achieve much more than trying to be somebody which does not come naturally to you. Isn't it, Adzhar?
Yeah, because trying to be somebody that you're not carries a lot of stress, a lot of pressure on you. Every day you are putting on an act. You're trying to be somebody and you have to put energy and energy and energy into it, and it exhausts you, and it turns you into a different kind of person, a more sour version of yourself. So at the end of the day, you may take home a shitload of money and be super rich and all that kind of thing, but I doubt you can really call yourself, I'm happy by being somebody other than myself.
There are questions coming in, Adzhar, and there are some little nice one-liner appreciation notes also coming in, which I'll not show you now. You can go into LinkedIn and along with your own blah blah blah, you can read this. But I will go to your favorite topic, Adzhar, which is off-roading, and I want to kind of club that topic before the session kind of ends for today. Now, I know I have heard about your off-roading adventures for a long time. I think you've done some very crazy things. Now, a lot of people, in the outside world, think of HR and think of a very boring personality. Many a times, for more often than not, because I think there is this mindset that HR is very process oriented, very policy oriented. They fit themselves into a framework. But if somebody sees your side of off-roading adventures, I think they will say, "Who is this kind of a person?" So, my question to you is, can you share two of your off-roading adventures with us, which had an impact on your leadership style or your overall personality, or changed the perspective of you looking at things? So I know you have tons of off-roading adventures, but something which impacted you.
Okay, off-road is basically taking a 4x4 or four-wheel drive vehicle into the jungle or onto long overland trip, and I've done both. In those days, when I was younger and stronger, we used to go into the jungle with my family almost every weekend, and it can get very, very tough. Equipment breakdown, trees fall, and rain, and mud, and all of that kind of shit. There was one time when I took a friend of mine who was also my boss, who was going home, leaving the company at one point, and together with another friend, we took him and his son into the middle of a Kelantan jungle. And then me and my friend Dave, we got to the place and we were putting up tents and we were putting up camp, naturally. But my boss after that remarked to say that, oh wow, you guys know what you're doing, and everything happened by teamwork, everything was unspoken, and I never noticed that. Because we've been doing it so naturally for so long. And after that, I started to notice about the fact that, things that you take for granted, it's because a lot of people have internalized the need to work together, the need to apply for teamwork, and then you start to notice a lot of that in your organization also. A lot of things that you used to take for granted, you suddenly realize that, it's not that simple. You need to look at it with a different eye and be a bit more appreciative with things. The other aspect of 4x4 is I go on a lot of long distance travel. I've traveled up and down South America a couple of times, and I've traveled in Africa a couple of times, and I've traveled from Malaysia to Europe, or Europe to Malaysia, or Central Asia by 4x4. So I probably racked in a few 100,000 kilometers, traveling in basically almost every continent. And I discovered that even though the people tend to be informal, even though the people are friends and the trip leader and all that, they're all your friends, you will see leadership being exercised. Because you're in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the Kalahari Desert or the Gobi Desert or the middle of a wasteland in the Andes or in the Amazon, you need leadership. Not everybody can go up there to say that I know what needs to be done, blah, blah, blah. You need somebody to take the mantle of leadership. And if you're that person, you must exercise your leadership. You must make the tough decision. If you're not that person, then you must relinquish your authority. Don't try to be pandai-pandai. Don't try to be too smart for your own ally. Support the person whom you have accepted to be the leader. If not, we spend almost a week traveling all the way from the south of the Amazon across the entire jungle before we come out at the other end with broken vehicles and all kind of setbacks. And we managed to do it because there was a clear leader and everybody respected the leader, and we all pulled together. Even though almost all of us in the team were big leaders ourselves, in another arena. Back home in our own job, in our own family, we were all big bosses ourselves. But in that particular instance, everybody say that, oh, right now I'm just the follower. I'm the coolie. I will accept the authority. You make the decision and I will support and I will accept your decision. If everybody don't make decision, you're screwed. If everybody
It's a decision also, you're screwed.
so you're screwed. So
Interesting. And we can't we can relish, and I'm sure you can relish and remember all your off-road journeys when in the current lockdown all you can travel is 10 kilometers outside for groceries and essentials.
now that
Life, that hurts, I'm sure.
last year when they relaxed the lockdown, I immediately took my 4x4 and I basically drove all around the peninsula. And I went with some friend into the jungle of Kelantan. I was in Kelantan 3 times in September itself. I just love being on the road. And this is a bit of a torture for me, but it's a bit of a torture for everybody also.
Yeah. There's an interesting question which has come up, and I have one more question, but I'll include this in. There's somebody called Ashish, who's a good friend, who's asked this question: which type of leaders do we need in COVID situations, as we know leadership completely failed to manage COVID?
We need leaders who are brave and who dare to make a decision. Because the biggest problem that we have is not that you can say, oh, that is the wrong decision. The science of the pandemic is still unsettled. Nobody can really say for sure that this is really the right thing to do, that is really the right thing to do. But if we have a decisive leadership, you have to say that this is what we need to do for the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or whatever. It may or may not be the right decision, but at least people are quite settled about it. And sometimes by making a decision, make that decision the right one. Like if you're not sure whether making decision will make COVID worse or better, but by making it, by getting everybody to follow along, by getting everybody to feel comfortable and confident in your leadership, that alone can help to solve the situation. And I think the biggest problem that we have in Malaysia, and not just in Malaysia, in many, many parts of the countries of the world also, is that there isn't clear leadership. Number one, the leadership is not driven by fact and science. And number two, in spite of whatever fact and science is available, many people still don't make the tough choices and the clear decision.
It is felt across, I think, not only in corporate, across in governments, and I think Ashish, Azhar's answer is quite clear. In addition to Azhar's answer, my personal take on it is leaders should, in such crisis situation, leaders should over communicate than under communicate. I think it is much better to communicate regularly, because that gives people a flavor of things are under control, than under communicate and open up that ambiguity to say, oh, what's happening, and we don't know where to run around for information, isn't it?
Yes, and listen to your PR people and don't try to be the PR expert yourself. Listen disasters on that line.
Okay. I have a question, and before I'll go. Then after that, I'll go to audio questions from audience as well. And purely because this we wanted to cover. In today's world, whether it's an experienced HR professional or it's an HR professional who is kind of in the middle of the stream, or a senior leader as an HR professional, what are the 3 traits, given the current environment, and I'm talking of the pandemic environment and what future holds for us as what are the 3 behavioral traits you would recommend we should possess to excel over the next 3 to 5 years? Any top 3 traits which will help any one of us? And I think that's a question for me also, which will help us kind of excel over the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, number one, of course, you have to keep the operation and the business running. If it falls apart now, then you got nothing to build on. Number 2, and this is the exciting part that make me miss being at work, because I don't see enough of it. You should be thinking about how am I gonna come out of this stronger than my competitors, because we all have been whacked by this. So if you're in airline industry, all airlines are being whacked. If you're in this particular industry or that particular industry, we all are being similarly hampered and by the pandemic. But I don't think enough people are giving enough thought to what kind of organization have to come out of this. Yeah, sure, there are thoughts about working from home and technology and this and that and all that kind of stuff. But I don't see really fundamental, really revolutionary stuff. For example, in HR, what kind of terms and conditions of service have to happen, for us to go forward, given the fact that organization will not look like it is now, over and above the fact that some will be at home and some will be working. What kind of talent do you need? What do you need to do to prepare for the fact that at some point we're going to be back to a semi-normal or almost normal world? And are we just going to be saying, woo, I'm glad that we are here now? Or are you going to be saying that I am ready? I'm already moving at top speed. So I think that those are some of the interesting challenges that HR needs to be thinking about. And I don't think I see enough of it. I see a lot more of the operational stuff and business as usual stuff, but not enough thought, not enough revolutionary thought about how do we take advantage, how do we be better, and how do we be really, really ready over the next 3 to 5 years, because the world is changing.
Okay.
And I don't have the answer, but I wish I was in a position to be thinking about the answer.
Okay. No, but then I think that's quite helpful. I think we all need to kind of think what the world is going to be in 3 to 5 years from now, and what are the traits which will help us. I mean, we can talk about enhancing our online capabilities today. Adzhar, and I know that at least, even if it is 1%, both of us have enhanced our capabilities of learning how to go live stream, isn't it? You would give a thumbs up for that, isn't it? So I think it is all about, we have to kind of learn ourselves. We have to move on where the world is moving at this point in time. I will add.
That's more on a personal basis, Vic. But I'm talking about, if you're an HR leader, you should also be thinking about what are the brave, dangerous, risky things that you need to do to position your company in an advantageous situation to take advantage of the next 2 to 3 years of the post-pandemic world. So yeah, we have to do things for ourselves, but we also have to think about what advantage can we bring to the organization.
Okay. I'll take a last question, purely being conscious of time, and this one was one of the first questions which was asked by Kristen. I hope, Kristen, you're still there to get an answer to this question, otherwise you can see the recording. Hi Adzhar and Vikram, what's your take on permanent remote work arrangement post-COVID, and what's the future of HR in an AI world?
I don't like working from home. I don't like remote work, but I do know that it has to be a permanent part of the future going forward. But when I was working especially over the last 15 or 20 years, what we tried to do was we tried to make work where you spend so much of your life and your time interesting and exciting. So being at the office is not a chore, but being in an office is a pleasure. So you try to transform whatever that you need to do to make people want to come to work. And also, it's very, very difficult to engage people, to motivate people, to push people, to collaborate if you're not working together. Yeah, you have technology, you have this and that and all, but they don't work as well as having face-to-face. So the future is clearly a hybrid of that, of those jobs. And for those people who say that, I love to work remotely, then you got to remember there are risks to that. If your job can be done remotely, at some point somebody is going to say that I don't need this employee. I can just outsource it, and then you can be my contractor, you can do freelance and all that kind of stuff. So there is that risk. I wouldn't say it's a danger, it's a risk that people need to be aware of. If I cannot have an impact on you by you being part of the team, solving problem, having fun together, creating a great culture, then I probably can just outsource it.
True, and I think we are experiencing that where some top 4 organizations, whether it is Twitter or Facebook or Google or Microsoft, they are taking some very, very concrete decisions whether they are going to move to a hybrid model or they are going to move to a model where they want. And I think some of these organizations will try. I totally agree with you. That's time. There's some Sharma has mentioned unhinged chat. Thank you, Sharma. Great stuff, Adzhar and Vikram. I think we're pretty much on time. Like I said, Adzhar, 1 hour will go fast, very fast. It just flew past by. A heartfelt thanks to you for joining the Curious Mind series. It was my first, and I couldn't have started with anybody better than you. I'm 101% sure of that. I think some of your inputs are really, really valuable. You can call it invaluable, but I think they're very helpful. And to all the audience who have stayed with us, Thank you so much for an hour. I'm sure you've benefited by hearing Adzhar and his inputs. And like I said, if you like it, do send in your comments. This video is getting recorded, so you can view it again. And if you want a part two, nowadays whether we are watching Netflix or Amazon or Disney, there is always a part two which is becoming very famous. So if you want a part two of the same and a continuation, do let us know, and we'll be more than, I'm sure Adzhar you would be happy. But Adzhar, any parting thoughts on your end?
Well, have a great weekend, everybody. Life is tough, and I always joke around by saying that life is tough, and then we die. I call myself the happy pessimist, so I don't have much illusion about life. So in some way, I take things as they come. You have the good days, you have the bad days, and it's just part of the whole thing. Don't be too happy when you're successful. Don't be too sad when you're not. Those are some of my life philosophy. Work well so far.
Fantastic. That's helpful for me, definitely on a long weekend. Well, to every one of you who have attended this session, thank you once again. Thank you for joining the Curious Mind series. Please stay home. Please stay safe. If you're stepping out, please wear your mask. Follow the SOPs. Do all the blah blah blah, like what we have done the blah 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 over the last 1 hour, and I think it will be beneficial for all. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye bye.